Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Eco Kids podcast. Firstly, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's listened to the first couple of episodes. It honestly means so much to me that people are listening, and I love hearing your feedback and questions. One thing I'm really hoping for this podcast is that it can become a place where parents and educators can better understand each other because I think we all want the same thing. We all want children to be happy. And sometimes we just see things from different perspectives because we're looking at it from different places. So today's episode is one I've been wanting to record for quite a while now, and it's called Things Early Childhood Teachers Wish Parents Knew. So before I start, I want to say that this isn't about criticizing parents at all. It's quite the opposite. I think most parents are doing the absolute best they can, and I think teachers are as well. The challenge is that there are so many things happening behind the scenes that families never get to see. So, if you've never worked in early childhood education, why and how would you know what's happening? So, today I thought I would share a few of those things, not to make anyone feel guilty, but hopefully to build a little bit more understanding between home and early childhood education. So one of the biggest things I wish parents knew is just how much relationships matter. I know that my first few episodes I have been banging on about relationships, but it is very important, and you will probably hear me talk about it in almost every episode because everything comes back to relationships. Children don't learn just because we've planned an amazing activity or bought the newest educational toy. They learn when they feel safe and when they feel like they can trust the adults around them. And they learn best when they know that there's someone there who genuinely sees them and understands them. So I think when children have a secure relationship with an educator or a teacher, they're much more likely to take risks in their learning. They're more likely to ask questions. They're more likely to have a go at something that might be difficult and recover when things don't always go to plan. So the emotional security is the foundation that everything else is built on. Another thing I wish parents knew is that we notice far more than you probably realize. We might notice when a child becomes increasingly fascinated with dinosaurs after going to the museum, or when they're a little bit quieter because they didn't sleep well, or we notice when they've learned a new word, or when they've finally been able to climb something that they haven't been able to do for a few weeks. You know, these little moments matter. These little moments matter because that's actually where the real learning happens. And I think, you know, there are always things that your child needs. And it's also really important for teachers and educators to know what's happening in your child's world. So if you've moved house, maybe grandma's been sick, if they're not sleeping very well, they're struggling with something, if there's a new baby coming, etc., it's really important to communicate that and actually tell us because that information helps us to understand their behavior better. Behavior doesn't happen in isolation. So when children come into their early childhood environment, they don't just walk through the gate and leave their lives outside. They bring all of their experiences with them, just like we do as adults. I think one thing, again, it really depends where you send your children for early childhood education because there are a lot of varying qualities out there. But one thing that surprises parents is about how emotionally invested teachers have become in the children that they care for. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions out there where people think we're just supervising children all day or we play all day. But the reality is, we celebrate success alongside children and we worry when we see them struggling, and we genuinely miss them when they move on to school or if they move house and they move away. All of those things really matter. I remember children that I taught many years ago who are now growing up, and I still wonder how they're doing. And I think that's one of the really cool parts of early childhood education is that the relationships are real and that they matter to us as teachers as well. One thing that I do want to touch on, which can sometimes be difficult to talk about, behavior. So when teachers maybe mention that a child has been having a difficult day or struggling with something, it isn't because we're complaining or we are trying to label them. It's because it's really important that we work together in partnership with families, because children behave differently in different environments. You might have a child who's really calm at home, but when they come into a group setting, they really struggle with that. Or maybe because they've been in early childhood all day and they've held it together, they might go home and have some really big emotions. It's important to remember that neither of those situations mean anyone's doing something wrong. It's just a good reminder to us that children experience the world differently depending on who they are with and where they are. So the communication between home and early childhood is one of the most important tools that we have, because the more we understand each other, the better we can actually support children. And that's actually another red flag for early childhood education. If a service is not communicating a lot between what's happening and they're not really wanting to know what's happening at home, because it is really important for us to work together for the children. Another thing that I wish parents knew is that play is learning. Now, I know there's a lot of information on social media that is kind of increasing our awareness about the importance of play, which is amazing. I know that sometimes we can look at children playing and we can still wonder what they're doing, and it might still look like they're just playing. So, what is it actually doing for them? We might see children building towers out of blocks. You might see them running outside, digging holes. We might see them making potions. We might see them pretending to be superheroes or playing mums and dads. Sometimes to an adult, it doesn't look like a lot and it can look like chaos, but there is so much learning that is happening in all of these situations. And it's the kind of learning that that is really important. It's a lot, honestly. For me, this kind of learning is better than any school or anything can teach you, because children are developing real life skills. They're developing skills such as problem solving. They're experimenting. They're developing their language. They might be negotiating, building friendships, and learning about emotional regulation. And I think it's also important to remember that we as adults don't always need to be right in there. Some of the most important learning that I've actually ever seen happen is when adults step back and allow the children to lead. Another thing that I wish parents knew, because to be in New Zealand, at least, to be an early childhood teacher, you need to be a qualified teacher, and you also need to uphold your teaching registration from the Teachers Council. Being an early childhood teacher is very much a profession. So there are a lot of standards we have to meet, which means there is a lot of paperwork to do. So it really depends on how your service does things. But many of the services I've worked in utilize learning stories and individual planning. We do a lot of documenting of assessments. We do internal reviews, meetings. We have to do a lot of professional learning for ourselves, as well as keeping up with the teaching standards, code of conduct, and meeting licensing requirements. So there's a lot of health and safety that goes into that, and preparing our environments for children. And the last thing that I wish every parent knew was that you don't have to be a perfect parent. Your child does not need perfection. All they need is connection, to know that they're loved, and to have that consistency, and know that there are adults that will are there that will listen to them. And they also need people who are willing to work together. It's an important reminder that parents and teachers are not on an opposite team. We are teammates, and we are both trying to help children grow into confident, capable, and kind human beings. I emphasize kind because that is very much something that is at the core of my personal teaching philosophy. But yeah, it's just important to remember to communicate openly because in the long run, the children are the ones who will benefit from that. So this was a little bit of a shorter episode, but thank you so much for listening to today. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate a follow on the podcast because it helps more families to find these conversations. I'll also be putting together a companion blog post and a Eco Kids parent guide to go alongside this episode, just to help with some practical ideas to help you build positive relationships between your home and your child's early childhood service. As always, if there's a topic that you'd like me to cover in a future episode, I'd love to hear from you. You can find me through Eco Kids Collective on Instagram or Eco Kids Education also on Instagram. I have 2 different pages / Eco Kids Collective online website. Until next time, take care and go well. And I will see you in the next episode.